Hey everybody, what's going on? This is my first video log update here on FimFiction. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is for FimFiction, so feel free to ignore this if you have no intention of ever reading my stuff. But if you are interested in reading my stuff, you should stick around. So, What You Mean to Me is complete. I'm sure everybody's aware of that now. And the reception to the last chapter has been overwhelmingly positive, and that makes me very happy because I worked on it forever, and I was really scared that people might not like it after waiting so long, so that was good. And people have been asking me, what's next? What are you gonna do now? Are you gonna do a sequel? I don't think I'm gonna do a sequel. Don't write it off completely, but the reason it did like the Tarantino style ending, like starting where it ended and ending where it began, was very much on purpose, because to me that was the end of the story. I have some ideas of things that could happen next, but thematically the story was trying to communicate how love doesn't have boundaries. That was kind of the central theme of the book. There was obviously sub-themes of, like, you know, self-identity and not conforming to social standards and things like that, but, I mean, to me, it was a love story. It was a romance, and the main theme there was that it transcends social norms. That's really why I made Rhyme as old as I did and Scootaloo as young as she was. It wasn't just a comment about, you know, age differences. Like, that was a metaphor for any differences. So that's what it was trying to communicate thematically. And the reason I never really dived into the social commentary or the social aspect of this kind of relationship in terms of the story itself was because, A, I really wanted it to be something that you interpret yourself. Bringing in social commentary into the equation almost brings in a third party, so it's like you have the characters, you have the readers, and now you also have society, or how I project society. And I felt like that was just adding an extra voice into the conversation that I didn't really want. I very much wanted it to be like, this is the situation, how are you going to perceive it? Because if I brought in a societal standpoint on it, society, if they rejected it, would be very antagonistic, and then you would be rooting for the characters to overcome society. So you kind of come in with a biased perspective because you've been with these characters so long, and hopefully you empathize with them. But if society empathizes with the characters, then it doesn't really do anything to expand the storyline because everyone's on the same page, and right now all the parties involved in the narrative are on the same page. So there doesn't really seem like a point in doing that. So to me, I very much wanted to be like, it's your thoughts with the story presented, and you can draw your own conclusions without anything else coming into the equation. So that's why I really don't have any plans on doing a sequel to What You Mean to Me. However, I have a ton of other ideas that I'm thinking of doing, and I'd like to do all of them. I don't know which one I'm going to do first. I'm just going to put them out there and see what people think about them. Just because if one is super popular, doesn't mean I'm going to end up doing that one. I'm just going to kind of float wherever I want, but I'm just putting them out there kind of to test the waters and see what people think. While I'm not going to do a sequel to What You Mean to Me, I do have some side stories I was considering adding to the equation. So there's a side story I want to do with Scootaloo and be from her perspective, and it would be what happened to her while Rhyme was at work in Chapter 6. So why she got all dolled up the way she did, what happened when she went to Sweetie Belle's, and things like that. So it would be kind of a short one-shot, probably 10,000 words or less, explaining what happened as soon as Rhyme walked out the door and she was left to her own devices until she showed up at Clover Cafe. So that's one of the side stories I want to do. Another one would be a side story from Rainbow Dash's perspective, and it would be what happened after she left the hospital. I know a lot of people would probably want to see that because people are mad at Rainbow Dash, but if any one thing gets written, it's probably going to be this, just because it's something I kind of wanted to do from the beginning, and I almost wrote this before I finished Chapter 6, but Chapter 6 ended up taking so long, I figured I might as well just finish the main story first. So there's a side story I want to do with Rainbow Dash. And then a lot of people has asked in the comments, like, how did Sweetie Belle and Apple Bloom end up together? And I really didn't put much thought into it. The reason that I had them together in passing in Chapter 5 was because I wanted a way to have them out of the picture and kind of have Scootaloo feel even more isolated than she already would be. Because if they were, I mean, they're still friends, obviously, but at least for me, I've had friends who, like, hook up, or, like, not with each other, per se, but get into relationships, and you almost self-project your isolation because they have this thing that you don't, and it takes away time from you. So the fact that they were going out with each other pulled both of them away from Scootaloo to make more time for each other because they're in a romantic relationship now. So it was really just a device to distance them from Scootaloo without getting mad at her. So I really didn't think through, like, how did this happen? But then people asked, so I'm like, well, I have some vague ideas, but nothing fleshed out. So that's another thing I could possibly explore in that relation to that story. So those are the 3 side stories that I had for What You Mean to Me. I don't know what of those I'll do. I'll probably do the Rainbow Dash one, but we'll see. The second story I have actually has nothing to do with What You Mean to Me, and it's very experimental and different than anything I've ever attempted to do. I mean, I've only ever written 1 novel, but in terms of just narrative structure in general, because I've attempted to do comics for a long time, I've never tried something like this. It's called Lyra and Bonbon's Incredibly Boring Life, and it's kind of inspired by Regular Show, and what I want to do with it is I want it to be an episodic fic, where each chapter is a separate story, and it would tie into a Tumblr blog, and it would be Lyra and Bonbon. They would be in a relationship, but it's already established, so the fic wouldn't explore how they got together. They'd already be together, and they would be working together at a candy shop. So Bonbon at this point wouldn't own a candy shop, but she'd work at one. I don't know what it would be, because it's still just very rough. And they'd work together there, and Bonbon's very hardworking, Lyra's a slacker. Sort of a slacker. If you want to know how I perceive Bonbon, read the first chapter of Avert Your Eyes, because to me, that's what Bonbon is, or what Lyra is. Lyra and Bonbon, both in that fic. Bonbon is a straight shooter, Lyra is very, like, rough around the edges, and I'm not the first person to characterize them that way, but that's how I would write them. So their personalities would be identical to what they are in that story, because in my mind, all of my stories take place in one cohesive universe. So they'd be the same characters, ironically enough. So Lyra and Bonbon would be together, and it would be an episodic fic. And the way it would work is that it would tie into a Tumblr blog. So what you would do is you could submit ideas on the Tumblr blog about what you'd want Lyra and Bonbon to do. But the way it would work is that you could submit one of 2 phrases. It would be, everything started off normal, Lyra and Bonbon were blank, and then you'd fill in whatever you want it to be. You know, like Lyra and Bonbon went out to go buy apples or something. Or you could submit, until everything went to shit when blank. And then you could say, when everything went to shit when Cthulhu sprouted out of the well in the middle of Ponyville or something. And then so you'd submit one of those 2 phrases, but you couldn't submit both. It would have to be one or the other. And then I would go through the list, I'd pick one of each that I'd like, plug them together, and try and write like a 10K one-shot about it. And I have a bunch of those, just like chronicling the weird, retarded, like, almost like, stream of consciousness adventures of Lyra and Bonbon. It'd be called Lyra and Bonbon's Incredibly Boring Life, which really isn't boring. But that's the point, just like Regular Show isn't really regular. So that's kind of where I got the idea from it. Something could be interesting. I don't know how well I would do with that, though, which is why I kind of think I might want to test the waters and do that in private first before I start actually saying, oh, I'm going to do this. Because usually my stories are very much like grounded in a singular, cohesive, continuous narrative. So I don't know how well I would do coming up with new ideas like that all the time that have nothing to do with each other, but it'd be interesting to try out, and I think it'd just be fun. Another idea is obviously finish Avert Your Eyes. I still have Chapter 2 of that half written. It's been sitting on my phone in Google Drive for a year, and I have up through Chapter 5 planned out. I think only be 7 or 8 chapters total, so that would be fun. It'd be super simple. Like, there's no conflict in it. It's just a singular rising romantic action, and that's it. There was nothing in that. It's kind of what I planned What You Mean to Me to be. I didn't plan to have the whole thing with Coda and stuff happen. There's just something that kind of happened as I was writing. But Avert Your Eyes is a very simple romance story. Nothing graphic, just super lighthearted, slice of life romance, and very, very simple. So that's another thing I could always go back and finish. Another idea is adapt Recovery into a novel. I think I might have figured out a way to get around Castlemania ruining the story. Very simple fixes that are basically cop-outs, but it works. So I could keep going with that, and I would make that a fic. This would be a huge fic, probably over 100,000 words, just because of how big it was going to be in comic form. I'd probably do a lot of illustrations to go along with this. I wouldn't embed them into the story, but I'd probably pair them up on DeviantArt because I have a very visual idea of how I wanted everything to look. So that would be a huge project. I don't even know how big it would end up being, but it would be big, it would be long, It'd be an adventure story with a lot of slice of life elements in it, and some romance on the side. Another story is I actually wanted to do a male on male shipping story, and this one would actually be exploring sexual identity as well as trying to find self-worth. It'd be focusing on Noteworthy, and he would be interested in Big Mac, but he wouldn't feel... First of all, he doesn't know if he really likes guys, so it's kind of like this weird attraction he doesn't know how to express, and he doesn't know how to find out if it's like some just weird fluke or he actually is into Big Mac. And also, he wouldn't have a lot of self-confidence, so even if he does really like him, he wouldn't know how to approach it. So those are two themes I'd really like to explore, and so the story would be called Not Worthy. Play on Noteworthy. It's a really stupid title, but I suck at naming things, so it'd be called Not Worthy, and it would be exploring from his perspective his quest to try and like find some sense of self-worth as well as like self-identity in terms of his sexuality. And it would be a male on male shipping story, and I don't think it would be anything graphic in that either. It'd probably just be very romantic. The only other idea I have right now is an original story that has nothing to do with MLP, but it would be very heavily based on MLP in terms of I had this idea a while ago before I even got into the fandom, and I initially wanted to do it with all animal characters, but now that I've kind of been into MLP for a while, I think if I tell it now, I'd probably do it with mythical characters, so like griffins and hippogriffs and unicorns and pegasi and things like that, and that would make up the main cast. It'd be about a single mother who loses her son in this like big forest, and it's funny because this forest is a lot like the Everfree Forest. I didn't even know about the Everfree Forest when I came to the idea for the story, but her son would get lost in this forest, and she would gather up her friends and like say, we need to go in here even though it's dangerous to find my son, he's lost. And it would be start off really happy-go-lucky and like super peppy, but as the story continued, it would get progressively more darker, and the characters would slowly be corrupted by the environment around them and become more dark and more like brutal, because it would start very much like kind of like a kid's book almost in the way it's written, but as the story continued, the writing would get more complex as these characters continue to be tested by their environment and slowly have to become more and more depraved in order to basically survive. And so the question kind of becomes like, no matter how pure your goal is, how far do you go to do something good? Do you risk, you know, like corrupting yourself and becoming something horrible to continue doing something right? So I don't know what that'd be called. I don't know the specifics of it. It's an original story, so it would probably not even be on the site. I'd have to just write it somewhere else. But that's another idea I got kicking around. So that's really all I got right now in terms of ideas I want to do. Interested to see what you guys think, if any of them sound interesting, if all of them sound interesting, none of them sound interesting. Let me know in the comments, either on YouTube or here on FimFiction, because I'm sure I'll probably embed this in a blog on FimFiction as well. But yeah, I just figured I'd kind of let that out there to let people know that I am still writing. I still have a ton of ideas. What You Mean to Me is not going to be my first and only novel. Writing is like the best thing ever in my opinion now. Like, it's better than making videos, it's better than drawing, it's anything. It's like it's my calling. And I very much felt like the Cutie Mark Crusaders writing this book, like slowly figuring out that this is my passion and the one thing that like I truly feel talented in and I feel like I'm good at. And there are definitely still times when I'm like, man, my writing sucks, but at the same time, like, I've never had such an overwhelmingly positive response to anything I've made like I did with What You Mean to Me and What We Have Become. So I have you guys to thank for that, for really making me feel welcome here on the site, that I'm doing something good, and to inspire me to keep going. So everything that comes after this is all because of you guys. So yeah, that about does it. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I'm probably going to go play Hearthstone with Paleo now, because I told him I'd do that when I was done with this video. So until next time, I will talk to you all later. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll take that into consideration as I continue to clackety-clack away and try and write some more stuff. So, bye-bye.